Alright, so the topic is Hibernate fetch strategies and that infamous n+1 select problem. So here we are going to look into fetching strategies, and then we are going to see types of fetching strategies, and this type of fetching strategies are based on two factors. One is how fetching is done, and the other one is when fetching is done. And then we are going to look into what n+1 select problem is all about, and it basically influences number of select statements that need to be performed, and obviously that will influence the overall performance. Okay, so you want to avoid n+1 select problem. So we are going to actually see various examples of when n+1 select problem occurs, and then recommendations at the end. So fetching strategies. So fetching strategy is a strategy Hibernate will use for retrieving associated objects. Okay, so this fetching strategy is relevant issue when you are dealing with retrieving associated objects. If you are dealing with a single table, then it's not a problem. Okay, but when you are dealing with retrieving associated objects, then depending on what fetching strategy you are going to use, the overall performance will actually will be impacted. So fetching strategy will have a performance impact, meaning the number of select statement will be determined depending on what fetching strategy you are going to use. Okay. So fetching strategies may be declared in the mapping file, or if you could actually specify your fetching strategy whenever you make HQL or criteria query. Okay, so we'll see all these examples. So types of fetching strategies. So these are two different factors. One factor is how fetching is done, and the other one is when fetching is done. So how fetching is done, you can choose one of these four different fetching mode. Select is a default, and you can use join, subselect, and batch. And also when fetching is done, the lazy is a default, and immediate is another option you can specify. Okay, so we're going to actually talk about each of these in a bit more detail. So if you don't understand what I said on this slide, don't worry about it. So let's talk about each of these fetching strategies, starting with how fetching is done. Okay, so we're going to look into four different fetching mode. The first one is the select fetching, and this is the default. Okay, and this select fetching is vulnerable to n+1 select problem, which means n number of selects are going to be executed to retrieve associated entity or collection. Okay, so we are going to see example of this one in a few minutes. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Okay, so I just want to give you a big picture of the concept first, and then we are going to actually play around with the lab exercises, and you'll actually observe this n+1 problem. Join fetching is retrieving associated instance or collection in the same select, or using inner join. Okay, so associated instance, that's the case when you have a one-to-one mapping, and the collection is when you have one-to-many mapping. So when you are using join fetching in HQL, you can construct HQL string using join fetch clause like this. Okay. When you are using criteria API, you can call set fetch mode, and then you can say fetch mode.join. Okay, so this is something that we looked into yesterday as well, right? Okay, so you can specify this fetch mode in all of your queries. Subselect, so that's so select fetching, and we just covered the join fetching. And the third fetching mode is a subselect fetching. So in this case, what happens is the second select is used to retrieve associated collections for all entities retrieved in a previous query or fetch. Okay. So unless you explicitly disable lazy fetching by specifying lazy false, the second select will only be executed when you actually access the association. So lazy means, when you say lazy equals true, that means you are not going to retrieve, you're not going to fetch those objects unless they are accessed. That's lazy equals true. Lazy equals false, that means regardless whether those objects are going to be accessed or not, you are going to retrieve anyway. Okay, and again we'll see examples of that in a few minutes. And batch fetching is you can specify the size of the batch on a collection, associated collection. So when you say batch size n on a collection or an entity class mapping, you're basically telling Hibernate to optimize the second select, either lazy or non-lazy, by fetching up to n entities. Okay. Okay, so you can specify this fetch mode in HQL and criteria API, but you can also specify in the mapping file as a default here. So in this case, suppose this is the asset. This is a collection within another parent class, right? And if you say fetch equal join, that means these permissions entities are going to be fetched in join select mode. Okay, so select fetching, the first mode, which is the default, is extremely vulnerable to n plus select problems. So you might want to enable join fetching in the mapping document like this. In that case, you are not going to have n plus 1 select problem. Instead, it will use inner join to retrieve all the associated objects in the first select. Now you might want to ask, why not use join all the time, right? But the problem is, suppose you have a product and you have a 1 million. Let's actually think about the one-to-many relationship between supplier and products. So supplier, suppose a particular supplier has, the 1 million products, right? So when you're trying to fetch the supplier, if you use join, in this case products, then it will actually retrieve 1 million products, regardless whether you are going to use it or not, right? Okay, and of course you can specify so that's basically join. So you do not want to use join all the time in that particular, and the scenario I just gave you to is one example. Okay. All right. So that is a fetching mode. Now, the when fetching is done also actually have an impact in terms of how many selects are going to be performed. Okay, so this is actually lazy fetching and immediate fetching. So lazy fetching is that collection is fetched when the application invokes an operation upon that collection, meaning it's going to actually fetch those collections only when that collection is accessed in your application. If your application does not access those collection objects, then fetching is not going to be done. Okay, and this is a default, by the way. Okay, so moving forward. N plus 1 select problem. Okay, so the example we are going to use is the supplier and product one-to-many relationship. So one supplier can have multiple products, many products. Okay, so that is the example scenario we are going to use. And the sample data we are going to use to try different fetch mode is like this. So supplier, we have 4 suppliers. Okay. And then we have products, and here the supplier and product as one-to-many relationship. So in this case, the first 2 products are made by first supplier ID 1, and the second, the product 3 is made by the second supplier, and fourth product is made by third supplier, and supplier 4 does not have any products. Okay, so even though this is a very simple set of test data, it should actually cover, it should have enough data for us to play around. Okay, so the factors that influence the number of select statements are in fact 4. Okay, when fetching is done. So depending on whether lazy mode or not. Okay, so if the lazy mode is set to true or false, it will have an impact in terms of number of select statement. And of course, how fetching is done. That's the fetch mode. Okay, we're gonna actually mostly focus on select and join. Okay, and also whether supplier is accessed or not in the application. Okay, so the through product, and again, this will actually have an impact with the lazy. Okay, and also caching. Whether caching is, we're going to actually talk about the caching later on. In Hibernate, there are two different types of caching, first level caching and second level caching. And first level caching is default. It's enabled regardless, and you cannot turn it off. Okay, so when supplier is cached in the first level cache or not. Okay, so these four factors will have the impact. It will influence the number of select statements that are executed. Okay, so we are going to in fact try this combination of these things. All right, so each hands-on lab in fact is named like this. So this is lazy true. That means lazy is set to true, and we are going to use a select fetch mode, and then supplier is not accessed. And this one is the same lazy true mode, but supply is accessed. And this one, lazy is set to false. And this one is lazy is set to true, but we are using join fetch. And also supply is not accessed by product, and supply is accessed. So basically these 8 combinations we are going to exercise, and it will have a different impact in terms of number of select statements. And some of these will have that infamous n+1 select problem. Okay, and here you can also specify the fetch mode, left outer join or right outer join. So we're going to try all this. Okay, so we are going to try example number 1. So this is a case. We are going to set lazy true, and select mode is going the fetch mode is going to be select, and supplier is not accessed through product. Okay, so what it means is this. So these are 4 factors we talked about. So lazy mode of supplier set to true, which is a default. Okay, and fetch mode is set to select fetch. Okay, and that's a default. Fetch mode used for querying on product. Okay, so this lazy mode is set for supplier, and this one is set for product. Okay, and supplier information is not accessed in the application, and caching does not play a role in the first time the supplier is accessed. So we are actually starting from scratch every time. So caching does not play any role. Okay, so this is a sample application. So let's actually take a look at how we configure first. So this is the supplier mapping file. So here supplier mapping file, and we have not set any lazy attribute. Okay, which means that lazy equals true. That's a default. So that's lazy true. Okay, you can specify if you want to, but not specifying, we'll use the default of lazy equals true for supplier. Okay, the fetch mode is we are going to perform the select fetch mode. So we are going to use the select fetch mode as a default. Okay, and here we are going to display product list without supplier name. Okay, which means supplier is not being accessed. Okay, so those are the conditions. So the supplier is not accessed is like this. We get the products first, right? Okay, so we got the products, and for each of those products, we are not accessing the supplier. So this is comment out. Okay, so that is the situations. So in this case, what we are going to see is just a single select statement for retrieving product. So one single select statement for product, and you don't see n+1 select problem because supplier is not accessed. It's called a delayed n+1 select problem because later on when you in fact access supplier, it will, that's in fact our second exercise, it will in fact show the n+ select problem. Okay, so let's actually go to exercise. Let me actually explain the second exercise 2, and then I'm going to let you try exercise 1 and 2. Okay, all right, so that's the exercise 2 is now supplier is accessed. Everything is the same, but supplier is now accessed. So so everything is the same, but supplier is accessed. Okay, so that's the difference from example 1. Okay, and now so what we are going to see is display product list with supplier name. Okay, so in that code, now this from the product we are in fact the accessing supplier. So for each of the product, it will try to access supplier, and this will cause a select statement. Okay, so if you have 3 products, then it will actually have another 3 select statements. So if you see the output, this is what you are going to see. This is the n+1 select problem. So 1 select for product, but n select statement for supplier. So depending on how many products, if the product has 1 million products for the supplier, then you are going to execute 1 million select statements. And this is n+1 select problem. Okay, so let's do exercise 1 and 2. So this is, the exercise is numbered. Okay, so let me just run this guy. Run as. And you are going to see a single, select state. Yeah, so this is, we actually show SQL to true. So we see one single select statement, right? Because we are not displaying any supplier. Okay. Now for exercise 2, now we are trying to access supplier. Okay. So if you run this guy, now you see this is for select product. Now we are seeing 3 select statements for supplier 0, supplier 1, supplier 2. Well, actually, these are the supply for each product. Okay, so now we are seeing 3 more select statements. Okay, so this is n+1 problem. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna give you guys about 10 or actually 12 or 13 minutes for you to digest the concept of it and try things out. Okay. Okay, so exercise 3 is now we are going to set the lazy false and supplier not accessed. So when you say lazy false, that means it's eager loading or immediate loading. Okay. All right. So this is lazy mode is set to false, meaning eager loading or immediate loading, and the supply information is not accessed. Okay. So let's see what happens. So this is how you're going to set lazy false for supplier. Okay. And here we are not accessing supplier from the product. Okay. Now, here you are experiencing n+1 problem. Okay, even though you are not accessing the supplier from the product. The reason is because we set the lazy to false, meaning it's going to load them even if it is not accessed. So that's what it means to be eager loading, meaning non-lazy mode. Okay, so this is again n+1 select problem. Okay, so let's move forward. This one, lazy false and supplier accessed. Okay, so this one probably doesn't have any impact. It will have the n+1 select problem anyway. Okay, whether supplier information is accessed or not. Okay, still n+1 select problem. Okay, right? All right, so that's exercise 4. So let me finish up the presentation, and then I'm going to give you guys a big chunk of time to try things out. Okay. And exercise 5 is now we are going to set the lazy true to again, lazy to true again, or user default, and join fetch. And now we are using join fetch instead of select fetch. Okay, and supplier is not accessed. So that is a difference, join fetch mode. Okay, so in this case, basically what we are going to do is we are going to use a join fetch HQL. Okay, yeah, so the fetch mode in join fetch, yeah, okay. So this is what we do. And what we are going to see is a single select statement where inner join is being used. So you don't see any n+1 select problem in this case. Okay. That's exercise 5. Exercise 6 is, supply is accessed. Okay, again, it will probably have the same result. So supply is accessed, and with, okay, join fetch is still there, and it will have the same inner join thing. So this is the same result as the exercise 5. Okay, so that's exercise 6. Now moving forward. Now in 7, we are going to set lazy false, but we are still using join. Okay? And so that's the only difference. We are setting the lazy mode to false. Okay, and we are still using inner join. Okay, so the same result. Okay, and exercise 8, supplier accessed. Okay, so again, it's probably the same result. Okay, all right, that's exercise 8. If you want to try left outer join and right outer join, you can actually specify them. Okay, so basically we are using rather than inner join, we are using left outer join and right outer join. And again, those of you who are not familiar with different types of joins, I recommend you to take a look at MySQL join presentation. Okay. All right, so that is exercise 10, 11, 12, and 13. So this is actually using criteria query. Okay, and 15 is, now we are going to use a caching. Okay, so in this case, caching plays a role, and if you take a look at this code, what we are going to do is, we actually perform this query operation. Okay, so in this operation that there is no so this is the first time we are actually performing this operation. So far this is the only thing we have done in all previous exercises. Now we are performing the same query, and this query will get the data from the cache. Now you can clear the cache. Once you clear the cache, and then if you run the query again, then it will have to perform select statement to the database. Okay. Here, this one will not actually send the select statement because things are coming from the cache. And here it has to go to the database again because first, yes, session.clear meaning is the clear the first level cache. Okay, so this is what you are going to see. We actually have the n+1 problem, and then the second, so this first batch, second batch, and third batch. So if you go back, this is the first batch. We do n+1 select problem, and this one, it doesn't have an n+1 select problem because things are the supplier informations are cached. Okay, and then we clear the cache, and then we are actually seeing these things again. Okay. All right, so that's exercise 15. Fetching strategies. So recommendations. So joint fetching is good for small collection of child objects, often used with a parent. Okay. So if your application is typically using the parent with a collection of child collection, most of the time, then joint fetching is a good thing to do. Okay. However, if the collection is large, or the collections are not always used, then you might want to actually use a lazy select fetching. All right, so that is the end of the presentation. So let me just kind of give you a sense of the lab documentation. Basically, lab documentation is just reflecting what I talked about in the presentation. So we just did the exercise 1 and 2, and basically, you are going to so from 0 to 8, 0 to 10, 0 to 8, we actually different combination of lazy and select mode, and whether supply is accessed or not. And then 9 and 10 is using different join mode, left outer and right outer join. And then 11 to 13, we are using criteria query instead of using HQL query. Okay, and the 15 is the performing a cache. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about the 20 I'll give you about 20 minutes to finish this exercise.